Hi, everybody. My name is Maya Hazlett, and I work for Iowa State University Extension and Outreach. My job for Iowa State is to teach youth about a variety of topics related to growing crops. And so today I'm really excited to talk to you guys about something that is really important for growing crops, and that is pollinators. So our topic for today is pollinators, agriculture, and science. And we're going to try to figure out exactly what do people mean when they say things like save the bees. And this here is a photo of one of my favorite musicians and performers. And there he is in a video wearing a shirt that says save the bees. So what does that mean? So I want to start by making sure everybody knows what a pollinator is. So take just maybe like 30 seconds and think, what is a pollinator? What does the word pollinator mean? So pollinators are living things, right? They're living things that do a really important job. At its sort of simplest explanation, pollinators help plants grow. That's one of the important things about pollinators. They help plants grow by moving pollen from one flower to another. And we're going to talk more about flowers and pollinators and flowers and pollen today. But their job is to move pollen from one flower to another. And when they do that, they help fertilize those flowers. And those flowers have to get fertilized in order to form fruits and seeds. And so you guys can probably see this is really important for agriculture when those fruits and seeds are things that we are harvesting and eating. So just a little reminder of the plant life cycle and where that fits in. Plants start as a seed, right? The seed grows, gets bigger, the plant gets bigger, and then it will produce flowers. And then these flowers will turn into fruits and seeds, but only after they're pollinated. So pollinators are really important right here in turning those flowers into fruits and seeds. So just a little bit more about how that happens with flowers. So here's a diagram showing different parts of a flower. And that pollen that we're talking about is produced on these stamens and on the anthers of the stamens. So here's the anther, and that's where the pollen is made. And the pollen has to land here on the stigma in order for that flower to be fertilized and turn into a fruit. And we're going to see more about how that happens and how pollinators help. So we are going to start with a little demonstration. I'm going to pause briefly to get my demonstration set up. So today I'm going to use a model to demonstrate how this pollination works. So what these are here, these are my flower models of the flower parts that we just saw. So these are representing apple flowers. So here's our apple flower. And here I have some cups sticking out, and then they have some sequins in them. So what do you think those sequins might represent? So those sequins represent the pollen. So this would be the anther with the pollen on it. This middle part here is the style, and then this here on top, there's a sticky part, and that is the stigma where the pollen needs to land. Now I've also added some red sequins down in the bottom here. What do you think that might be? So those red sequins, they represent nectar. So when pollinators visit flowers, they aren't just visiting, for fun. They are going to collect food. And so the nectar and the pollen is the food that they're trying to collect. So here's the bee for today. We're going to use a mason bee. And I have a little picture of my mason bee, and the back of him is sticky. So bees have hair all over their bodies that helps the pollen and the nectar stick. So my bee is going to go over here, visit this first flower. When he visits the flower, he's going to get, or she more likely, it's going to get pollen stuck to the body. And then they're going to also try to pick up some of that nectar. And when a bee visits a flower, it really kind of is touching all the flower parts at once. So it's probably also going to touch that center part, and it might leave some pollen behind there. And then it's going to fly. It's going to keep collecting. It's going to fly over to another apple flower that I have here. It might leave some pollen there. It'll try to get some more pollen, and it will get some more nectar. And then it will take that food back to its nest to feed its babies. Okay, so if we look at our flowers, we did get some pollen to land there on the top. So that would mean that this flower got pollinated. So now that this flower is pollinated, what's going to happen to it? It's an apple flower, right? So it is going to turn into an apple. So that bee is really important in getting this flower to turn into an apple. So that was one model that showed how pollination worked. I'm going to demonstrate one more model, and this is an easy one that you can try on your own as well. So I have a bowl here, and the bowl has some candy in it. So what do you think this bowl and the candy represent? So this is our flower, and what's in the flower? What might candy be? Another sugary thing that's kind of similar for flowers. So the candy is representing our nectar in our flower. And then I have some cheese balls that I'm going to put on top. And what do you think the cheese and the cheese balls might represent? So the cheese balls are going to be our anthers, and that lovely powdery cheese on top is going to represent our pollen. And then we're going to have this paper towel here to represent another flower. So say you want to get that candy that's in there, right? You're similar to how a bee would want to get the nectar. As you get in there and you're trying to get the candy, you're going to get some of that cheese dust on your fingers. And if you wipe your hand on the towel, you should be able to see some nice little orange smudges. So that's just another way to represent how those bees can transfer pollen from one flower to another. Okay, so you guys saw some examples of how pollinators move pollen around. So I want to know if you guys can think of some different living things that are pollinators. So take like 30 seconds and write down, or even just think in your head, what are some different kinds of pollinators? Did you guys come up with a few? Maybe at least one or two? So some examples of pollinators are bees. So we just saw the mason bee before. So hopefully you guys got that one. Butterflies, there are some butterflies that help pollinate as well. Some things that you might not have thought of, there's some other insects like beetles and flies that can also be important pollinators. Bats, so bats that eat visit flowers can move pollen around. So bats can be pollinators as well, and then some birds as well. So here's just an example of some picture with some butterflies, and then you guys might recognize this bumblebee here. So there's actually a lot of different organisms that can be pollinators. Today, I want to spend some time talking about a group of pollinators that you might not know so much about, and that is native bees. So the word native means that it originated in that location. So these would be bees that have always been here, have evolved and still live here. So let's think about native bees in North America. So how many native bee species do you think there are in North America? 4,000, 1,000, 250, or 75? What's your best guess? So the answer is 4,000. There are actually 4,000 different species of bees in North America. And so right here in Iowa, there's hundreds of native bee species. So a lot of times when we think of bees, we maybe think of honeybees, which are not native, or we think of bumblebees, but there's actually so many different kinds of bees, and some of them are really important pollinators. Okay, so how many of these native North American bee species do you think make honey? All 4,000, 435, 15, or none? Have a guess? The answer is none. Only honeybees make honey, and honeybees are not native to North America. Honeybees come from Europe. They were brought here to make honey, and so they're a great source for making honey. They also help with pollination of crops, but they are not native, and there are a lot of native bee species. Okay, I have just a couple more questions here. So I want you guys to take a look at this photo and decide, is this a bee or is this not a bee? So give me a yes or a no. What do you think? So this is a bee. It doesn't look like what we think of when we think of bees. A lot of times we think of bees have that, yellow and black stripes. And again, that's honeybees. And I just told you there's 4,000 species. There is a lot of diversity in size, shape, color, habitat, places that they live. So there's really a great diversity of bees. And so this is a lovely metallic green sweat bee. And sweat bees and a lot of our other native bees also don't live in hives. A lot of our native bees are what we call solitary bees, which means that they make their own little home just for them and their young. And they don't live together in a big colony like honeybees do. So there's really a lot of diversity of bees. Okay, one more. What about this one? Is this one a bee? Yes or no? Okay, have an answer? This one is not a bee. It has that sort of characteristic, yellow and black coloring. It's kind of shaped like a bee, and actually it is related to bees. This is a wasp. And so wasps have a similar shape to bees, but they don't behave the same as bees. And you can see bees, we talked about a little while ago, are hairy to collect pollen, right? This wasp is not hairy, but some wasps and flies actually too can look a lot like bees. So native bees are really important pollinators of some crops. In particular, apples, blueberries, cherries, squash, but other crops as well. And without these pollinators, without these native bees, we would not be able to produce as much of those fruits as we do. And we're also a little bit concerned about native bees. Native bees face threats like not having enough habitat, not having enough food, which is flowers, right? Not having enough flowers, not having enough habitat to make their nests. They can also be affected by pesticides. We apply pesticides to our crops, right, to protect them from insect pests, but some of those pesticides can be harmful to bees. And then there's also diseases and parasites that can harm bees as well. And so bees, we're concerned about the health of our pollinators, and we're concerned about the health of our native bees. And native bees, we don't know as much about them as we do about honeybees. There's been a lot more research on honeybees, and so there's a lot of things we just don't know about native bees. So what can we do if we're concerned about native bees? And so one thing that we can do is that we can learn more. We can learn more about bees and native bees and other pollinators. And so entomologists are scientists that study insects. And so they're entomologists that specialize in studying bees and learning more about bees. And that can help us to protect bees. On the right-hand side there, that is an entomologist who works in Hawaii. And she is studying native bees there in Hawaii. Agronomists are people who study how best to grow crops. And so at Iowa State and at other universities, we have agronomy departments, and they work on how to best grow crops. So that means how to grow crops to get the most food produced while using the fewest resources and protecting our environment. And so one of the things agronomists work on is also how to produce crops while protecting the environment, including things like bees. And so this, that other picture there is two students at the University of Wisconsin studying crops. Okay, so that's a couple of ways we can do is we can learn more, but as we learn more, it's also important that we teach that, and then we let people know, we let the general public know, but also our people growing crops. And so teachers, but also our extension specialists. So this here is a picture of Randall Cass. He is our entomology extension specialist, and he helps with, he does research on bees, but he also part of his job is to talk to people and help them learn more about bees. So teaching people. And there are things that we can do to reduce our pesticide use and use our pesticides in ways that are responsible and so that they don't harm bees. And so crop advisors are people that work with farmers and help them decide, make management decisions. So like when to plant, what to plant, also what pesticides to use, when to use them. And so crop advisors can be a big help in having farmers use pesticides responsibly. And then something that we can sort of all help with is helping there be more habitat for bees, helping there be more flowers blooming at all times of the year. Farmers can help by growing flowering plants around their fields or as cover crops, or there's a program called the Conservation Reserve Program, where land that's not being used for growing crops can be used by the farmers for environmentally friendly plants like pollinator habitat. And then there's lots of things that we can do in cities as well. You can put, flowers in your yard or around your school. City planners are people that sort of decide or help to plan where things go in the city and how things in the city are organized. And so if you want to have, some cities have initiatives where they are trying to increase habitat for pollinators in their cities. And so city planners and other city officials would be involved in that as well. So just some examples of different things that we can do in different ways to help bees. So I hope that you enjoy learning a little bit about pollinators and native bees in particular. So have a great day. Thank you.